Good evening and welcome to the first in the series. The program is called Your Health, Your Action. I'm Cassandra Crawford. I will be one of your hosts for this evening's program. We have an hour to get into the discourse, and this discourse is about your health and about taking action to maintain it. Now, chronic non-communicable diseases have been a concern at a national level for quite some time. They're a burden on the public purse as well as directly impacting the workforce and the quality of life of families across Barbados. The COVID-19 pandemic, as we all know, has compounded the situation. Those already impacted by non-communicable diseases neglecting their at-home care, and others shifting their focus to avoiding COVID-19 and not monitoring other health changes or challenges to seek early diagnosis and guidance. Now, this evening, we begin a solutions-oriented conversation. And of course, I am happy to introduce my co-presenter for the program, David Ellis. He is, of course, veteran broadcaster, and he will tell you more about this national response to the management of chronic non-communicable diseases, and certainly more about our special guest for this evening. David?
Good evening, and thank you, Cassandra. Well, the background is that the various media houses in Barbados have their respective programs and publications that are aimed at trying to encourage people to do it the right way when it comes to their health. But this is a situation which we believe to be much bigger in scope. And that's why we have a different situation here tonight, where we have a simulcast, where the Caribbean Broadcasting Corporation and Starcom, and we are also online as well, as we seek to bring people to a position of better self-care. That is the ultimate objective against the background which has been outlined by Cassandra. We have some other partners here, but let me tell you who are the specialists that we are going to have, because the whole idea is that this is to be driven by you, the public. And as a result of that, we have a psychologist in Solien. We have a family physician in Dr. Joseph Herbert, and a nutritionist in Andrea Griffith. But we also have some other people. Golda Phillips is on the telephone. She is one of the Barbadians living with hypertension. And she is representative of so many of you. But we also have a 22-year-old as well. He doesn't have diabetes, doesn't have hypertension, well, as far as he knows. And therefore, the question is, why is he here this evening? We're going to find out. And let us at this stage thank our partners. There are several of them. We have had basically the Diabetes Foundation, the Heart and Stroke Foundation, Flow Barbados, the Diabetes and Hypertension Association, the National Nutrition Center, the Prime Minister's Office, the Ministry of Health and Wellness.
So it is indeed a full partnership, the government of Barbados and, of course, those non-governmental organizations. And we want you to engage. We want to hear from you. So feel free to send us your questions. We want you to send questions that can help your immediate circumstances. You can send those questions if you're viewing online. You can also call us here at the CBC. Please note the numbers 228-5562 or 228-5563. As David said, this is being broadcast across the radio and television services here at the Caribbean Broadcasting Corporation and at the Starcom network on the Voice of Barbados. So we want you to engage, we want you to stay tuned as we try to help. Remember the topic, hypertension, behavioral change needed for better management. And we've got all the folks who can help you with that. We're going to take a quick pause and we'll be back to get the conversation moving. We're back with you. So as I mentioned, we've given you the numbers. Keep those numbers handy. We want you to send your questions as well online. We'll be happy to ask the nutritionist on your behalf. or of course, the family physician, if you need assistance from the psychologist, because when it comes to behavior and changing and addressing that, that's where it all needs to start. Acceptance is always the first thing if you get a diagnosis, and we certainly want people like Ramon, who is not affected by a chronic non-communicable disease, to be aware and to start the preventative behavior right now. But to set the tone, to tell you a little more about the mandate and what is expected and hoped for this, we're going to hear from the Honorable Dr. Sonia Brown. She is Minister of State in the Ministry of Health and Wellness. David?
Good evening, Dr. Brown. Well, first of all, what we'd like you to do is to put in context why a project like this is particularly important. Where is Barbados right now, especially as it relates to the whole question of non-communicable diseases?
Okay, thanks for having me, first of all, both of you. Barbados is in, I would hazard to say, crisis mode when it comes to the NCDs. Cassandra hit the nail on the head when she first started the program by saying that COVID led to several factors that increased the appearance of NCDs, increased the complications of NCDs, increased the number of admissions going into hospital as a result of the complications of NCDs. I'm sure you would like to hear about the factors. It began basically when COVID started with a fear of contracting the virus. We all know people stayed away from the polyclinics, people stayed away from the general practitioners' offices, people were fearful of actually contracting the COVID disease. However, that meant that a lot of the NCDs, hypertension, diabetes, and even cancer, which some people tend to forget, went out of control. So in my setting, what I saw for myself was that with the economic downturn, as Cassandra alluded to, there was loss of jobs. Hence, people had no real disposable income. So what was seen was either people skipped out on their medications, using it every other day or every 3 days to have it stretched. People refused to fill prescriptions, whether it be at the polyclinic or in the private sector, because of money. So it led to the out of control, should I say, in some cases, you saw skipping of meals. So things like diabetes and hypertension ran out of control. So when the comfort level was a little better, or when the disease really went out of hand, we were seeing more cases at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital. And it was mentioned especially that we were seeing women and men coming in with end-stage cancers, breast cancers especially, the delay in seeking treatment or the delay in following through with tests, which has happened in my case in terms of the patient. But we are even seeing in some instances, not a whole lot, children coming in with hypertension and diabetes, type 2 diabetes. And the problem here lies partly in the fact that children are becoming more and more obese. I think it's something like 1 in 3 children are now obese or overweight. Sedentary lifestyles, missing from school, missing from a formal PE program, led to the increase in weight in some of these children, and adults, I dare say. So in essence, everything went out of control. So we're now basically trying to catch up, and there are other factors which time will not permit me getting into.
Very quickly, there are those who would be asking for some sense of what follow-up action is being taken to get a better sense of just how the situation has deteriorated since COVID. Can you give us any sense of where we're going in that regard?
Well, I can safely say that the polyclinics are back out in their full force. There was a decrease in the number of patients entering the polyclinic when COVID was at its height. So we're now seeing individuals coming back in for care in the private sector as well. The hospital is trying its best to deal with it. We know that there are bed constraints. This is no secret among the public. We know there's an influx of individuals into the accident and emergency. So what we have put in place are programs like yours, Mr. Ellis and Cassandra, where we need to educate the public, the things on board in terms of the nutrition policy for school children, which includes exercise. That's in tandem with the ministries of sports and the Ministry of Education. So there are things that are afoot. You saw the issue with the sugar sweetened beverage tax. We got a lot of heat for it at first, but I think people are now coming around that this is the government's way of ensuring your health and your security in terms of your job productivity, working hours, work days. So there are things afoot, really. Programs like this, as I said before, we have several subcommittees on board. The NGOs, Heart and Stroke Foundation, has ramped up their efforts. We are seeing the NCD Commission is now being reformed again in terms of a new committee. National Task Force of Health and Wellness are now reconstituted and are back on board in terms of fighting the disease. There are still things we need to look at as a government, which include front of package labeling and warning labels, which is becoming more and more apparent in the world. South America has been fighting and has won the case for front of package labeling, as well as warning labels on food items, which would tell you at a glance if a particular food is high in salt or fat or sugar. So these are some of the actions that the government is taking, and in association with the NGOs and the civil society.
Thank you very much, Minister Brown, for starting the ball rolling on your health, your action. Let's go next, Cassandra, to one of the people out there on the line.
Yes. Well, as those calls come, we certainly look forward to responding to your various questions and sharing those comments. But before that, we want to hear from someone who is living with a chronic non-communicable disease. Golda Phillips, we mentioned, she is ready and willing to share her story. Good evening, Ms. Phillips.
Good evening.
Thank you so much for joining us on Your Health, Your Action. We wanted to have you here to explain to persons a bit about your experience and what it's like for you living with hypertension.
Well, it's a situation where you go to the doctor maybe every year and you get a checkup, and then from time to time the doctor tells you that you have to look at the things you eat because you're borderline, you're maybe having a blood pressure of about 135 over 90 and so on, and from there on you have to say to yourself, well, it is time for me to change my eating habits and done away with some of the things that would carry up my blood pressure, because you cannot only depend on the medication that the doctor might give you to control your blood pressure. Eating correctly is part of doing the job.
Well, what is your greatest challenge in trying to manage your non-communicable disease at home, trying to manage the hypertension? What would you say is your greatest challenge?
Well, as the minister said just now, that some of these things are fairly expensive, like the vegetables and the fruits and so on. But it is the things that would get you better, and for that case, you have to put yourself first as a priority and your health as a priority, and you have to be able to supply these things for yourself. You have to be able to get these things for yourself, because the biggest challenge out there is to be able to maintain the proper diet as you would have it, with the inclusion of plenty fruits and vegetables in your daily diet.
As I understand it, you have been battling with hypertension for about 10 years. How long did it take you to bring it under control?
Well, it takes quite a while, in that you go to the doctor today, and the doctor says that your blood pressure is 120 over 80, and you feel real good. So you get a little bit complacent, and you start eating every and anything. And when you go back to the doctor the next time, he might say to you, well, I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to put you on some medication. And then you realize that it is more serious than I thought. So then you have to tell yourself, well, let me get serious enough to stick to my diet. So it really took me about 4 to 5 years before I realized that this thing is really going downhill, because you get complacent because you get medication to help you, and you think that you could depend on the medication alone, not realizing that if you don't stick to your diet and do it the right way, that you will have problems.
Well, given the time that you've been battling with it, among the specialists that we have available tonight, is there any question that you want to put to them that you believe may be able to help you through the process?
Well, one of the questions that I would ask is, if your blood pressure continues to be above the normal level, or what we do believe would be normal, which is 120 over 80. Now, let's say your blood pressure continues to be like 140 something over 90 something. What other sicknesses can it lead to?
That's a good question, Golda.
And I think it should go straight to Dr. Joseph Herbert.
Yes. Good evening, Dr. Herbert.
Good evening.
Hi, good evening, Mrs. Phillips. Thanks for your question. I'd like to find out what, in terms of things that may be caused by uncontrolled high blood pressure.
Golda?
Say that again, sir.
He wants to know, what have you heard can happen if your blood pressure stays out of control? Yes.
Well, I have learned that your blood pressure being out of control all the time can lead you to heart problems and to stroke, etc. So I want to know what it is that can really happen to you
as a result.
As a result of this pressure being too high.
Dr. Herbert.
Okay. So you're absolutely right. The number one and number two most common reasons that people die prematurely in Barbados is heart attack and stroke. And high blood pressure is best perhaps thought of similarly to if you had the pressure in the pipes of your house being too high for a long time. It could just be a little bit higher than it's supposed to be. But because that goes on for many years, there is a speeding up in the damage of those pipes that may perhaps mean that they get clogged up faster, which happens in our bodies in conjunction with cholesterol problems and blood sugar issues, or they may weaken to the point where they may burst. And thinking of that, it's a similar sort of process that happens with our blood vessels all over our body. And the most common things that could lead to us having a serious disability or even death is heart attack or stroke. But these blood vessels are all throughout our body, so it can lead to poor circulation in our feet. It can lead to problems with our kidneys. It can lead to problems with our vision, among many other things. So that is really the consequence of our blood pressure on average being higher for a long time. And that's why it can be important that, yes, you mentioned your blood pressure just being 145 when we know what we want to aim for it to be under 140 over 90, or for some people under 130 over 80 in the doctor's office. Just being that little bit over the number for many years can end up with you having a much higher risk for having a heart attack and stroke than somebody that perhaps has normal blood pressure.
Why does it vary from person to person, the blood pressure being considered normal?
Why does blood pressure? Okay, so normal blood pressure for everybody is an average blood pressure of less than 120 over 80, as Golda mentioned. She's absolutely correct. We know that as pressure increases from that point, with the top number signifying the pressure at the time the heart is squeezing blood out, and the bottom number signifying the pressure in between each beat of the heart. So either one of those being elevated, it means that overall your average pressure is higher than it should be. And why the variation? Well, many of us unfortunately have genetic reasons for having high blood pressure. People of Afro-Caribbean descent seem to have several genes that mean that we're more predisposed to that. And when you combine that with environment where it is quite difficult to sometimes get healthy food or to get a good night's sleep and control your stress and to get time to exercise. It's a perfect storm that means that for many of us, our pressure is high. In fact, 40% of adult Barbadians have hypertension, and many of us don't even realize that we have it. So it's really a combination of factors, and for some of us, we'll have genes that put us at higher risk for that, for any of the mechanisms that cause hypertension, cholesterol-related, diabetes-related, or issues around salt balance. So it's really all of those things acting together that means that 40%, 2 out of 5 adult Barbadian hypertension, elevated blood pressure. And it's important to recognize that many of us don't even know it, because until something bad happens, it's not something that you can feel. It's something that you need to have measured to know.
Right.
Cassandra, the issue of food comes up again.
Yes, it did. And I'm glad that Dr. Herbert mentioned that bit there, that point about knowing, because the next time we chat with you, Dr. Herbert, I would like you to talk about some of the myths associated with feeling like your pressure is up and that kind of thing, and how often you should get checked. But one of the things Golda mentioned was diet being a challenge and the cost. So we have the nutritionist, and we are going to come to you next to shed some light on that, Andrea Griffith. But before that, let's just take this caller. Good evening. Welcome to Your Health, Your Action.
Yeah, good evening. Welcome to the panel.
Great to have you. Go ahead with your question.
I know that there are some people that are on hypertension that rather than take the tablets there, exercise. How safe is that?
Rather than take the tablet?
Yeah, your question wasn't clear.
They have some people that is on hypertension that rather than take the tablets, they decide to exercise. How safe is that?
Right.
Oh.
They opt for exercise exclusively rather than taking the tablets. Dr. Herbert, do you want to take that?
Sure.
Can it be controlled that way?
Well, it really depends on the person and the level of blood pressure. So I think the first thing is to recognize that even doctors' office blood pressures are flawed. Many people may go into the doctor and get anxious.
The white coat syndrome.
And we call it the white coat effect. So we think it's extremely important that people get a good quality home blood pressure monitor for your arm, one that is validated, and there are online lists that can allow you to find out if it is. The best way is to ask your doctor to guide you in buying one of those. But we think that people checking their blood pressure at home with the correct technique being taught by a health professional and getting an average of where their blood pressure is the first step to figuring out what is right for you. So it's very hard for me to give information that's generic. The first thing is to find out where your pressure is. Perhaps if your pressure is just a little bit over your target, now for most people that's 140/90 in the doctor's office, or an average at your home of 135/85. If you're high risk, like you have diabetes or you had a previous heart attack or stroke, it's 130/80 average, whether in the doctor's office or at home. And once you can figure that out, you'll figure out, well, how far over my target am I? For everybody, exercise, physical activity, doesn't need to be in a gym. It could be gardening, it could be swimming, line dancing. Finding what works for you is going to be beneficial. It will help lower your blood pressure, and it helps in many other ways. So I certainly would never want to discourage someone from exercising unless perhaps there was a concern that they may be having heart problems, in which we need to check that out quickly first to figure out that they're fit. And your doctor can help you with that if there's a suspicion. So it helps, and it helps in other ways other than lowering your blood pressure. It's important, but it may only lower your blood pressure so much. And the question is, if your blood pressure is far over the target, it probably is important to start taking medication if you want to get that blood pressure down and under control. And that's something that's best discussed with your doctor.
Absolutely.
But for many people, their blood pressure will be so high that you have to come at it from a number of different angles. And from research, we know the vast majority of people whose average blood pressure, when they've checked it at home over 7 days, morning and evening, checking it 2 or 3 times each time they say that, averaging it out, when it's over 140/90, we're going to need a combination of lifestyle changes, blood pressure and dietary changes, along with medication to get their blood pressure down and under control. And it really matters how quickly we do that. I just want to make this point: how quickly we get that blood pressure under control actually saves lives. We found that getting people's blood pressure under control in less than 6 months and having mechanisms within clinics to help and assist patients in doing that is critical. So we're trying to come up with ways that we can work with patients using home blood pressure monitoring, phone calls to follow up to make it easier for patients so that we can adjust, help them make those lifestyle changes and adjust medication to the point where it is under control.
So let's come back.
Point,
let's come back to the other specialists who are here, because some points have been raised here. Diet has been one, which will be pursued by Cassandra, and the other one has been trying to adjust to the reality that you have this particular challenge, that you need now to change your diet, you need to change your lifestyle, and that's where the psychologist comes in. So let's deal with the food part of it, and bear in mind that we're speaking at a time when food is rising in cost internationally.
Yes, so we're being affected in many ways, but we have to find ways to make it work. And we've been encouraging people at different times and constantly, though, to grow as much as they can. Do whatever you can to make a difference in your own space. That's part of the home care. So, Ms. Griffith, this would be a good point for you to speak to Golda's concern about the cost of healthy eating and the discipline associated with doing it.
You're muted.
Yes, please
she's
unmute
muted. Okay.
your mic so that we can hear you. We know that what you have to say is invaluable. So, all right, let's go again from the top.
So sorry, I do have some background noise from time to time.
That's all right.
And so good night once again. And we are living in some very crucial times, as you said. And on many occasions, I have to say to persons, you have to eat as well as your budget allows. And I have to stress on the your budget. Everybody wants to eat, whatever their taste buds, their palate feels for. One of the things you have to be mindful of is your condition. If we are speaking of hypertension this evening, we have to think of and put that at the fore of our minds. I think what a lot of persons do not realize is that sodium, what we call salt, is present in foods naturally. So this thing about adding salt to food is a social thing, is a cultural thing. So we tend to flavor our food. We like our foods in the West Indies. We like our food heavily seasoned, the spices, the pepper, and everything like that. That is not altogether good for us, and we are seeing the evidence of that more and more today, and very prevalent in our young people. We need to get back to the basics where we are using natural herbs and spices to flavor our foods, and start from using sodium or salt-based products. Even if when you think of the process of preparing food, the first thing we do, we lime and salt all of our meats. That's our first thing of adding salt to the diet.
So lime it, but forget the salt.
Lime it and forget the salt.
Okay.
If you care to, but you don't even have to, because once you marinate I'm going to use the term animal products because I want it to encompass fish, poultry, and meat. All right. Mm-hmm. Once it is seasoned in advance, that animal product has the chance to marry, to get into a good tight relationship with the seasoning, adding flavor. So we don't even need to go through the rigors of liming or even salting. If you want to have the lime, fine. And when you think of, again, when you're cooking now, let's say you're going to bread something, that breading is also seasoned. Then you're cooking, you have to flavor the pot. We don't need to do all of that. We need to turn to our natural herbs, or onions, or garlic, or rosemary, celery, sage, thyme. You know all of what I'm speaking of.
So we need cooking courses for the people who are hypertensive.
Yes.
I am here and I'm available. I'm for hire, so I am willing to do some demonstrations for you.
The truth is that most of the cooking that we see, especially on television and stuff, not aimed at people in that particular category. So that may well be something that needs to be focused on, coming out of all that you are saying. Yeah. But then that also then brings us to the other side of this issue, which has to do with making the adjustment. And this is what Golda had spoken about earlier. And the psychologist with us, Krista Sodien,
Before we bring her in,
Sure,
we may have to pause for a cause.
Sure. She'll be coming up next then.
Yes, so we are going to take a quick pause.
Thank you.
At this time, we will continue with Your Health, Your Action in a few minutes.
Hon, I know you like your rice and pork, but I wish you would eat more vegetables.
Sweetheart, why do you worry so much about what I eat?
I worry because you have high blood pressure and high cholesterol. The World Health Organization says that people with NCDs are more likely to become severely ill if they get COVID-19.
What?
And now that you're only working 3 days a week, you're spending more time on the sofa, watching TV, drinking soft drinks.
So how is eating like that going to help me? These times are so stressful. Just let me enjoy myself.
Vegetables are high in vitamins, minerals, and fiber to help maintain your weight and control your blood pressure. A healthy diet helps to keep your immune system strong and protect you from diseases.
I know you really care about my health, hon, and I really appreciate it. Look, I'm going to have some vegetables. Can I have a glass of water, please?
Wait, you wash your hands?
Hello?
Hi, Grace Me.
Hey, Cheryl. Girl, I can't talk to you right now. I'm doing my morning exercise.
Babe. Since when is your morning exercise so important?
Since the World Health Organization say that people with NCDs are more likely to get real sick if they catch COVID-19.
What?
Yes, you know I'm a diabetic. Plus, I put on a little size. So I got to exercise and use up this little bit of energy that I got to keep my blood sugar under control. Plus, my doctor said that when I exercise, it will help to keep my immune system strong.
Oh, so God forbid, if you ever get COVID, you have a better chance of recovering faster.
Exactly.
Grace, I never told you that I have high blood pressure. I don't even take the medication properly. I like got to join you in your morning soccer size or the line dancing. What do you think?
Yes, and I can send you the same routine that I'm doing here now, girl. It's real sweet.
Hon, I know you like your rice and pork, but I wish you would eat more vegetables.
Sweetheart, why do you worry so much about what I eat?
I worry because you have high blood pressure and high cholesterol. The World Health Organization says that people with NCDs are more likely to become severely ill if they get COVID-19.
What?
And now that you're only working 3 days a week, you're spending more time on the sofa, watching TV, drinking soft drinks.
So how is eating like that going to help me? These times are so stressful. Just let me enjoy myself.
Vegetables are high in vitamins, minerals, and fiber to help maintain your weight and control your blood pressure. A healthy diet helps to keep your immune system strong and protect you from diseases.
I know you really care about my health, hon, and I really appreciate it. Look, I'm going to have some vegetables. Can I have a glass of water, please?
Wait, you wash your hands?
Hello?
Hi, Grace Me.
Hey, Cheryl. Girl, I can't talk to you right now. I'm doing my morning exercise.
Babe. Since when is your morning exercise so important?
Since the World Health Organization say that people with NCDs are more likely to get real sick if they catch COVID-19.
What?
Yes, you know I'm a diabetic. Plus, I put on a little size. So I got to exercise and use up this little bit of energy that I got to keep my blood sugar under control. Plus, my doctor said that when I exercise, it will help to keep my immune system strong.
Oh, so God forbid, if you ever get COVID, you have a better chance of recovering faster.
Exactly.
Grace, I never told you that I have high blood pressure. I don't even take the medication properly. I like got to join you in your morning soccer size or the line dancing. What do you think?
Yes, and I can send you the same.
Thank you for staying with us on Your Health, Your Action. This is the first program in the series where we expect and look forward to engaging you. We want to hear your questions. You can send them to us online, or of course you can call us here at the CBC. The numbers are 228-5562 or 228-5563. This evening, as we mentioned, we have a number of health professionals and specialists. Our guests, you've heard, of course, from Dr. Brown, setting the tone, letting you know what it's all about and the current situation, the current state of things. Of course, you've also heard from Dr. Joseph Herbert, a family physician. You've heard a story from someone living, Golda Phillips, living with hypertension. And you are going to hear from a young man who doesn't have hypertension, but we certainly want him as part of the conversation, Ramon Brooks. That's coming up. But we started chatting with our nutritionist, Andrea Griffith. Let me make sure and get the last name right. And we also want to bring in Krista Solin, the psychologist, because behavior, how we change, how we think, that's a big part of it. So
this is what I'm curious about, that if we follow the nutritionist, there will be less salt, no salt meat, no pudding and sauce.
None at all? Moderation? What happens?
Let me hear how the nutritionist, the psychologist rather, now deals with this kind of situation where you have a patient who's been told what has to be done, a change has to be made. What are the cues? How do you go about trying to get that particular person to change behavior? Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for having me again. The thing about it is behavior change is not easy, and I'm going to start there. We have this concept of, eat salad and it's going to be fixed just like that, and that's not true. Behavior change is difficult, but it's worth it. And when we talk about health and wellness, something very important for us to note is that health and wellness is a journey and it's not a destination. So it isn't, let me eat some salad, let me exercise a little bit, reduce my blood pressure, and then back to normal. Now, what research tells us is that there are models for behavior change. And when we're looking at behavior change, there are different aspects we have to look at. We have to look at the cognitive aspect. What are your beliefs and expectations when it comes to your health? If we're practicing, let me eat and be healthy a little bit, get my blood pressure down and go again, we're going to need to adjust our expectations. What are our attitudes toward this change? What are our attitudes toward eating healthy? If we think eating healthy is boring and it's going to be awful, then that's how we're going to approach it. There's also the environment. Yes, we can talk about eating healthy, but when you're with your family and it's Sunday food or it's Saturday and you have your pudding and sauce, how do you adjust to that? Do you have a supportive network as well? The language around your health behavior. So we want to cut back soda. Somebody offers you a Coke. What do you do? And one of the things is even our language. We would say, no, I don't eat particular things. But when it comes to soda, we know we shouldn't be using it, but we kind of dance around it rather than changing our language and saying, no, sorry, I don't eat food with high salt content. I don't use soda. So our language becomes important. And I think it was Mr. Ellis, you had talked about classes. You see, that's so important because one of the things when it comes to behavior change is having the skill to change your behavior and also understanding that, hey, I have the ability to cook these foods. So the knowledge from what we're doing today, but also providing the skill for people to show healthy food can still be delicious. Healthy food can still be good. And learning new ways to eat and be okay.
Well,
So
most people who are diagnosed would be told, well, you need to see a nutritionist, but you make it sound as though you need to see a psychologist too.
No, it's really what we're doing today is really what I'm talking about, and that is tackling health and wellness from different angles. Having a forum right now that Golda could ask Dr. Herbert, what's going to happen if my blood pressure is high all the time? That's what we need. That's the education. You go to your nutritionist. You have a show teaching you how to cook. And so we are doing it. I think it's really to recognize that we're doing it and we're working together. That's why a psychologist, a doctor, and a nutritionist, we're all on a show on hypertension.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think that this is a good point to also hear from Ramon Brooks. He's a young man, and I am curious to know how these conversations resonate with him and persons in his age group who aren't directly affected or not themselves personally affected. So let me say good evening and welcome to Ramon Brooks. Hello, Ramon.
Good evening. Thank you for having me here.
A pleasure. So when you hear people talking about all these things and you hear Golda explain what is a challenge for her and what it's like for her when she gets things under control and then she falls off the wagon again, and how it affects her and what is concerning her about her longevity, what does that mean to you?
Well, it raises the question of what age group for me this is most prevalent. How do I go about curbing getting hypertension? Is it gender bias? Those are my three questions.
Get it, and whether it is gender bias. There's a third one you said. Before we get to your question quickly, you're 22 years old, and basically you're at a point where you don't have any of these diseases. Prior to being invited to this particular show, did it really matter to you? I mean, getting ready for crop over, getting ready to do bad? What's your lifestyle?
Well, honestly, I never really thought of it. I live a pretty healthy lifestyle, naturally, by nature. Drink lots of water. I don't really eat junk food. Work out, just a normal thing for me. And I don't ever have to go to the doctor. Yeah.
Is there anyone in your family, to the best of your knowledge, who is affected? Because if there's someone in your family, then it could mean you are predisposed.
Yes. There's two people in my family that are affected.
That brings us to the question of what kind of lifestyle should you live as a young person, not yet affected, but with people who are carrying this particular non-communicable disease in the family. Dr. Herbert, do you want to take that?
He's doing a lot of the right things already, it seems.
Well, thanks for that question. What can you do to reduce your risk? So we have a number of lifestyle habits that we like to promote because it's been proven that they reduce your risk for having hypertension, diabetes. The good news is that they sort of reduce your risk for most of the major NCDs, including cancers. And those things would be trying to aim being the operative word, because we're going to describe what is ideal, but we know that for many people it's just important to start with what you're able to do. But I'm going to describe what's ideal. At least 150 minutes of moderate intensity exercise per week. So that's 2.5 hours of something akin to walking briskly. If it's more intense than that, you may not need as much, but at least that is what we suggest you aim towards. Trying to have half of your meal is fruits and vegetables, low sodium, low fats, eating lean protein. So that could be, peas, legumes, soy, or poultry more often. Trying to avoid fried foods and fatty foods. We know those things are helpful. Trying to keep down to less than 1 or 2 alcoholic drinks per day. We know that almost a third of Barbadian men may have a day where they may go over 4 or 5, and you may not on any other days, but that has risks. So keeping down to less than 7 drinks per week for women and older men, and less than 14 for men that are under 65, and no more than 3 or 4 a day, preferably 1 or 2 at the max for a typical day. That's important. Avoiding tobacco smoke. And many people may smoke cannabis, but a lot of it has a fat or tobacco. So that too is tobacco. That increases your risk. Getting a good night's sleep. And we can't divorce that from mental health. So stress is a major problem. Working multiple jobs, not having time to put in those behaviors, those things go hand in hand. And that's challenging. We have lifestyles that really challenge the ability to maintain those habits. So my biggest advice that I could give is that when you know what's ideal, pick something that you're ready to change. It doesn't have to be that you're ready to do what's ideal.
All right,
Just
let's pause
that
here,
you feel
Doctor.
ready to take on.
We just want to take in this caller. Just hold your thought so that we get this viewer's question to you. Good evening.
Hello, good evening. How are you this evening?
Doing all right, thanks. What's your question to
I have
health professionals?
Two short questions. One is, Solin, one of your guests, mentioned something about Coke, and I was thinking that I have this friend who drinks a Coke every day.
Let's go with a soft drink.
Pardon me?
Let's call it a soft drink.
Soft drink, but
yes.
I'm just wondering if that particular beverage doesn't have risks in terms of the acidity in it, number one. And number two, I also heard the doctor just now speak about people using cannabis and so on and what it has in Fanta, et cetera, et cetera. But isn't it now, and I also heard Minister Abrams talk last week about the number of young people that are using cannabis, and it is creating a problem in the social system in Barbados. Now, isn't it contradictory now in terms of the government's push now in terms of selling medical?
Your question is not particularly relevant to where we are going in this program this evening. We are asking questions that are specifically seeking guidance from people who are affected by chronic non-communicable diseases, and in particular we're looking at hypertension this evening. So I think while it may be generally relevant, it is not specifically relevant to this discussion, and I think we should come back to Ramon Brooks, who had, I think he said he had two questions, but on the question of drinks and alcohol, I think the doctor also needs to clarify for many of us this distinction that people make between whether you have rum, whiskey, or vodka as a means of trying to reduce certain aspects of what is contained in the alcohol.
One is less evil?
So it is projected.
Okay.
So just to come back to the alcohol, 1 unit of alcohol is about concentration. So roughly 1 shot of liquor is equal to 1 bottle of beer is equal to 1 glass of wine. So it really doesn't matter. There is different in calorie content, so that's important. But generally speaking, the WHO is now saying, any alcohol is probably not good. So culturally, we drink a lot of alcohol. That's normal for us. It's intertwined with our history and our culture. But what I'm saying is that minimizing your drinks on a night that you're socializing to no more than 1, 2, or 3, and not having more than 7 for women and older men, and more than 14 drinks for the entire week. Those 2 things mean that you're in a much lower risk category. And there's probably about 1/3 of men in Barbados who fall into that high risk because they exceed that. They may not have an alcohol use disorder or what we call alcoholic, but that extra risk, what we call risky drinking, is in fact a major driver of cardiovascular disease, a major driver of injuries and violence, may I say, and also problems with our stomach and our liver. So I think that's worth putting out there and worth putting into people's consciousness that smoking cannabis with Fanta, tobacco, which is very, very common, small amounts of tobacco in that definitely increases your risk for cancers and cardiovascular disease as well. But if I just one really important point that ties into what Ms. Solian is saying, and I think is just so important, is that we describe all these things that are ideal, that you should be working toward, habits that you're building. It's important that if you want to make a change to your health, to pick one thing that you feel ready to do, even if you're not ready to exercise 150 minutes, if you're ready to do 5 minutes, 1 or 2 days a week, it's better to start with something and just work on building a habit. And as she also said, Thinking of things as being habits,
Yeah.
not something you're doing for a time, because it's about doing these things as lifestyles. So pick something you feel ready to do and work on it, no matter how small or easy it is. It's better to start, feel good about achieving something, build a habit, and then you can build on that 1 or 2 habits at a time. That's the best advice I can give you about how to make lifestyle change.
Ramon did have a question earlier which wasn't answered, so let's give him the opportunity to pose
ahead,
that
Ramon.
question. Yes, Ramon.
I was asking if it had a gender bias.
If it
Either male or
affects-
female is more predisposed to being affected by NCDs, hypertension in particular?
Yes,
All
that's
right.
what he's asking.
Okay.
Was a driver of issues for both women and men. Men are less likely to know that they have hypertension for social reasons. So we think it's really important that social organizations, churches, barbershops, workplaces help people to check their blood pressure, and that people get home blood pressure monitors for families and encourage each person to get a check using their doctors or internet to learn how to do that properly. I think that's very important for people to discover that they have hypertension, because many people just don't know that they have it. And then for women, we have issues that make people more at risk for obesity in our country, and that puts them at risk for different reasons. So for us, there are different factors driving it, but they're all important.
Ramon says at 22 he does not go to the doctor. I met a man in a shop who said that for the past 34 years he's never been to a doctor.
Wow.
And he said so proudly.
Wow.
Now, that's an older man. But for the younger man, I believe you need to address both, doctor.
I think it's most important that people become experts in their own health, more important than going to the doctor. So I would say, yes, a doctor can be helpful. A doctor can help you do tests, can help you get information in conjunction with a team. I fully endorse the point that Mrs. Solian made and Ms. Griffith, who I have the pleasure of working with. Having a team-based approach, people need help from health professionals over time to learn skills, and that can help you. But it is more important to learn those skills however you can from a multitude of sources to achieve the skills you need to build those habits. And buying a home blood pressure monitor is good, and checking that at home can be one of the most powerful things you can do. So yes, contacting doctors and finding a doctor that can work with you in a team that can assist you to build a conjunction with a clinical dietitian or a nutritionist or a psychologist, I think is extremely important, but it's not the be-all and end-all to health. It is just as important to acquire the knowledge and the skills for you to become a manager of your own health. Yes. And that's why I want to use the opportunity to put the importance in both things, because somebody may be 50 and say, well, I'm focusing on eating a plant-based diet, very little salt, I'm not having any alcohol, I am focusing on that way, and that's why I'm not going to a doctor. Well, I would say, well, there's stuff I can offer you, I can still help you, but that's fantastic. So I think, I wonder where people are coming from. There's many people that are really commit to really healthy lifestyles and therefore don't go to the doctor as much, and that's great. But it's important not to, I guess, at the same point, some people are scared to find out, and we need to make it easier for them. And knowing that doctors, if they're not going to quarrel with you, we just want to help you.
Yes.
That's what's important.
All right. So we had a caller. Is that caller still there? That's okay. So that's some good information though. And balance is what is needed here. Clearly, we need better at-home care so that we can improve our general health care. So if we do our part at home, then it's easier on the healthcare system. So let's really do that. I want to hear a little more from our nutritionist. She didn't get a chance to expand on those tips for what you need to do to really see how you can eat accordingly to maintain and manage that hypertension. So Ms. Griffith, I want to give you an opportunity, a couple minutes, just to say to us what needs to happen. And we see that you're taking care of other business as well. That's fine. It's all the family unit. That's what it's about. So you go ahead and talk to us. And don't forget, make sure we can hear you. Unmute. Yeah, so we're just making sure that you have all the information you need right here on Your Health, Your Action. Go ahead.
and welcome to your other presenter. Thank you very much.
Good to have that presenter.
Thank you. I just want persons to be cognizant of what they're really facing and understand the complications associated with hypertension, and understand also that diet is one of the first lines of defense. In addition to everything else that was said, we have a situation where persons are not eating enough fruits or vegetables. And if finances is a challenge, you gravitate towards the vegetables and leave out your fruit. If you cannot afford both, we encourage persons to do a home garden, help yourself and stuff like that. We want persons to eat more peas and beans. Dr. Herbert mentioned the legumes. Persons, when it comes to foods that are high in fiber, the legumes, the fruits, the vegetables, and the cereals, persons are not taking in sufficient of those foods, and we want persons to pay attention to that as well as their stress levels. We want persons to also reach out to the polyclinics to see their nutritionist. And I am not sure if I can say what I'm about to say, if you can't stop me. There are some programs, chronic disease self-management workshops that are being offered by the Diabetes Association. They're free. And we advise persons to take full advantage of those programs, take full advantage of having nutritionists available in every polyclinic.
How can they do that? How can they take advantage of these programs? Is there a number or a website that you can share now that we can also share?
I don't have the number to hand, but they can feel free to contact the Diabetes Association. It is on Beckles Road, I think, fortunately.
Okay, that's
but
right.
Please reach out. If they go online, they can find the information online as well. The programs are very informative. I'm one of the trainers. All the trainers are certified and everything like that. So we encourage people to please reach out. We are seeing the effects of it, and we're also seeing the effects of the hypertension in our children as little than 7 and 8 years old. So we know the impact it is going to have on our society in a few years to come. So we implore persons to take advantage. Whatever fruits and vegetables are in season, we encourage persons to utilize those as well. And we are here to help persons to formulate based on whatever their budget is. We will be nutritionists, can assist people to make the best decisions possible in going forward.
Budget and personal health situations or health circumstances, because we are aware that with certain conditions, or if you have other underlying situations, you may not be able to use certain things. So again, you have to do all these things and make the adjustments with the full support team, the full network advising you on your personal circumstances. So again, it's a lot to think of, but this is why we're here to give that support. So again, the behavior, Ms. Solin.
Your closing comments.
Krista, if you could go ahead and yes.
One of the things I just want to reiterate is that this is a journey. This is not your health and your wellness is not a destination, and behavior change is possible. I also want us to think that our exercise, our diet, is the way we take care of ourselves. It's the way we pour love into ourselves. You are worth the call to find the nutritionist, the extra conversation with your doctor, and the real message is that there's help out there. I also want to reiterate what Dr. Herbert said. You can start small. Start today. Start tomorrow morning. If it's cutting back what you need, what's not healthy for you, or doing a little exercise, you're worth it, and there's help out there. We'll get the help.
Okay. We had a caller quickly before we allow other closing comments. The caller wanted to know whether drinking more water will help improve circumstances if you are affected by diabetes and hypertension. Dr. Herbert or nutritionist?
All I would
go ahead.
Andrea, I'd make a very quick comment. A lot of us don't drink enough water. And if we can drink more water at the expense of drinking other things which have calorie content, this is one of the lowest hanging fruit, so to speak, in losing weight. A lot of our drinks have, one box of juice has 8 teaspoons of sugar. One bottle of sweet drink may have 12 to 18 teaspoons of sugar. A lot of our drinks having so much sugar, most of the drinks having so much sugar, that switching to something water or flavoring that water with mauby bark or something else like a fruit
Bark,
drinking
not
that
syrup. Be very clear. Bark,
exactly,
not syrup.
very specific there. That's one of the biggest things you can do to start making a change. And just like sodium, sugar is both, are things that our taste buds will adjust. If you can cut back slowly, or even if you cut back sharply, over time your taste buds will adjust and you won't taste as much sodium or sugar and won't feel for it anymore. But it's difficult, but it's one of the easier things you can do. Making a small change is the key. Just to reiterate, if there are things that are ideal out there, but pick one thing you feel ready to do and make the type of change you're ready to do and make it a habit.
Okay. All right. Ramon, what will you say to your younger colleagues quickly? You're muted. We need to hear you.
Oh.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Quickly, go ahead.
I say to pay attention to hypertension, do the necessary research, go to the doctor, get a workout in if you can. As you said, drink as much water, cut back on the foods that are high in sodium. From what I've learned from this program tonight. And that's what
Thank you.
Pay attention.
Thank you all so much. I think this has been invaluable and we look forward to continuing the conversation, and we certainly will do that, David, next Wednesday.
Yes, next Wednesday we look at the complications associated with hypertension. So that should be another interesting, perhaps even more interesting session. So
Please
join us
join
then.
us and engage. Good night.
Thank you.